any cheese at all?
No.
What a senseless waste of human life.
Hello, cheeseheads, and welcome to another episode of the Cheese Room podcast. Another week, still top of the league, another clean sheet. We've given the Gooners an existential crisis. What a fantastic weekend it has been. Joining me to discuss this fantastic result all the way from Vienna is the Harlow Globetrotter. How you doing, HG?
Evening, Franco. Evening, everyone that's listening. I'm doing all right. We beat the Goons, so it's a very, very good Sunday.
Yeah, you sound a little bit hoarse, HG. Have you been screaming at the TV in delight?
Just the twice, but the last time I checked, my NFL team was doing quite well as well. But certainly the cheer for the goal from Sonny was enough to wake up the neighbours at least 2 or 3 floors above me.
Good stuff. Also joining from up north, it's the Caller, full of gin. How you doing, Caller?
I'm incredibly happy tonight. I've got to say, Franco, what a performance. 3 more points, top of the league, 11 games played. I'm wondering when this streak's going to end. You know, we're taking on all comers and beating them and drawing with them when we can't beat them. And it's bloody wonderful to see. Good evening, everybody.
Excellent stuff. And also joining, he really wanted to come on the pod. And he's brought us good luck recently. He's not been on a losing pod for a long time. It's Mr. Seb Short. How you doing, Seb?
I am absolutely buzzing. I've had a lovely day. Went to some socially distant Christmas markets this morning, and I thought to myself, the only thing that could ruin this is if Spurs just don't show up. And they showed up. They beat the Goons 2-0. My 4-year-old Arsenal supporting little boy, in your face!
Yeah. I hope you've made him cry, Seb, in the nicest way possible. Oh, dear. Right, let's get into it. There was a few surprises today after Jose's comments midweek about who might not be playing at the weekend, but we saw Kane come back, we saw Reggie come back, and probably the biggest surprise, HG, was that Toby was in the squad.
I mean, he's trained a few days, so I guess I wasn't too surprised. I mean, I think once he was training with the team, you imagined that because we don't ask too much of our defenders when it comes to running, that he would start the game. So I think that if he's fit enough to train, he was going to be fit enough to start. So I wasn't too surprised, and I think that we know with Jose, when it comes to mind games, he's the master of it. So it worked out pretty well. We were, I would say, almost full strength today.
Agreed. Caller, do you think he was playing mind games at all?
Do we need to play mind games to beat Arsenal these days?
Well, Kane didn't look too unfit to me.
No, I just think that he rested Kane in the week and said have a rest. Vinicius was obviously poorly or injured in the midweek because he would have played, but I don't think there was anything wrong with Kane. Yeah, he was sort of just maybe he's got a little niggle and needed a couple of days rest. Stubbed his toe or something on the table at the training room, and therefore it was a good excuse for Jose to do the old, he's not sure about him. But he sort of backed off that anyway, didn't he?
Yeah, I guess so. In the end, I think Spurs fans made a bigger deal of it probably than anybody else. That's the thing. We all got scared when we thought the Kane might not play on the weekend, but we had nothing to worry about. And Seb, one surprise was that no Dombele, even in the squad today, ended up being injured. Were you a little bit sort of worried when you saw the lineup and he wasn't in it?
No, I wasn't worried. Ndombele's been great, but obviously Lo Celso comes straight in, and that's no bad substitute. The thing I was most surprised about actually was there was a lot of rumours about Lloris not going to make it. It was all over the papers, all over the weekend. Joe Hart was going to make his first appearance, I think, in the Premier League for 2 years, but obviously that didn't happen. And thankful because I thought Hugo was great today.
Yeah, no, he was. I think we after midweek we would have been a little bit scared if Joe was there. And let's just talk about the game, HG. I thought it was quite an even but niggly start. A few fouls here and there, but we got, again, another early goal, didn't we? And what a goal it was.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, we seem to do this quite often in big games where we allow the opponent to take the initiative, and I think Arsenal did that in the first few minutes. And you do start to worry, you know that they have decent players, and you know that if they get a bit of confidence, then anything can happen. And so for Sonny to take what was nothing more than a half chance and stick it somewhat close to the top corner, with Bernd Leno not being the greatest, it didn't have to be a fantastic shot, but it still went in. And I think it calmed our nerves more than anything and made probably the Arsenal players think, here we go again, which is what you want from any opponent, let alone the one you hate the most.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Caller, talk about the goal itself. It was great play from Kane, wasn't it? And then Son basically ran half a length of the pitch, and what a strike.
I think the biggest surprise for me was how much Arsenal backed off Son. So Kane did a great bit of work in the midfield, released it to Son, and Son loves to cut in and cut a shot, albeit not normally from quite that far out. But he's got it in his locker, and they just backed off him, and they were inviting him to shoot. It was ridiculous, and Son obliged, and the keeper was not very well set for the shot, and I think fantastic strike. What a player Son is turning into, or already is. And I take all the negative things I've ever said about his finishing skills back, because he's been fantastic this season. I think Mourinho's given him a new lease of life.
No, I agree. And that's the thing, what you say is right. Leno wasn't set. It almost seems like Arsenal were just backing off on the goalkeeper, because he likes to come out quite a bit, Leno. I think he's the sweeper keeper, and he was still kind of getting set. I think Son just went, he's far too far over the left and just curled it into the right-hand side, and Leno got nowhere near it. It was an amazing goal. And after that, Seb, I thought he was very disciplined. We instantly just kept this really strong shape, zonal marking in our own half, and we didn't really... We just sort of cut down the passing angles and then started to close down when they got into that final third.
Well, as we saw against Man City, you score that first goal, it was a similar time. The belief kind of floods through. Everyone knows their jobs in that team. If I can just go back to the goal, one thing I wanted to point out, it was obviously a wonderful finish from Son. But what I found really interesting is if you look at that goal back, is after Kane plays the ball out wide on the left to Son, Son is always the furthest forward. And what that means is that if Kane and Bergwijn, who is on the right, make runs, fast forward runs into the area, what they do is they draw the defensive players with them. And actually what that does is crowd the box, crowd the area. And the chances of Son having that space to get that shot off and it not hit a player, etc., is a lot more difficult. Kane actually stayed very far back, and I think it was Xhaka stayed with him rather than running into the box and being more bodies into the box. So I was actually, as well as a brilliant finish from Son, I was actually really impressed with the play from Kane, and the fact that Bergwijn actually he almost ran towards the corner flag to kind of give the space in the actual penalty area to Son. So I thought it was incredible. But yeah, to go back to your original point. Yeah, as soon as that goal goes in, it's just the confidence just kind of flows through the team, because everyone knows, well, this is what we've trained to do. I have no belief. I've got no doubt that this is the training that is going on in that team is get 1-0 up and the game's yours. We've seen it week in, week out now.
Yeah, no, we have. HG, the rest of the first half, we had a few chances, but really we did kind of settle back into that defensive formation. And were you nervous? Were you confident? How did you think the rest of the half played out?
I think I was nervous just because this was a game that I thought we had something to lose in. We look at the Man City game 2 weeks ago and Chelsea last week, and we all knew that we were probably underdogs going into it. Whereas today, being favourites against Arsenal just never makes me feel comfortable. So I think for that reason, more than anything else, I worried a lot today, first half and second half, because you're expecting Arsenal to do something that's going to hurt you. I think most of us have been around long enough to remember the times when Arsenal would sometimes just walk these games, certainly the games at their ground. And so you just don't know. Like I didn't want us to sit back and then regret it, which I think was what I was worried about. I was worried about them getting maybe a lucky equaliser from a set piece, or just maybe something that they probably didn't deserve and something that would have hurt us. So I think if I probably look back on it now, it was relatively comfortable for us, but I was so nervous watching it because I just expected the worst.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say they had a few more chances that kind of got into the box. Like, our defending is fantastic. There was always a head, whether it was Toby, Dyer, Højbjerg getting back, Harry Kane from corners seemed to get a few out as well. It's like everybody's just defending resolutely. But Arsenal did have a few chances, and I feel like if there'd be slightly better players, they could have maybe done more with it. But they didn't. We played the half out, and then Caller took us through the goal at the end of the half. I mean, it was a bit unfortunate for Arsenal that Partey was limping off the pitch at the time, but they just seemed to open up this big bit of space. A great ball by Aurier, and then Lo Celso, Son, Kane, and what a strike again.
I can't believe how hard he hit that. I want to see the
with his left.
With his left, with his weak foot, so-called. I want to see the miles per hour speedo on it, because he just absolutely smashed it. isn't it nice when they go in off the sort of rattle underneath the bar and into the roof of the net like that? It's just awesome. Brilliant finish. Great breakaway move. We are lethal. We are lethal on the counter and so solid at the back. And I'm glad you bring up the fact that if Arsenal had a few better players, well, they may have finished. Well, that's good. That's a good idea. Chelsea, they've got good players. They didn't break us. Man City, they've got good players. They didn't break us down either. We're looking impregnable at the back. And yeah, we ride our luck sometimes. I'm the first to admit that. But I think every team does to a degree. You can't argue with statistics. And we are solid defensively and lethal on the counter. And that move, both the goals today, were just textbook counter-attacking football. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. I think all I'm saying is that we're a little bit more open than we were again. I think Man City was the strongest defensive game. Chelsea are maybe a little bit weaker. In this one, we were just a little bit more open. But I think that's because in the first half, we did actually genuinely try and play against them. And I thought some of our play was quite good.
Just picking up what you said, Partey did walk off the pitch, which should absolutely be acknowledged as possibly one of the most stupid acts by a football player I've ever seen. I mean, why he didn't just go down and maybe try and summon some help or anything really, anything but that.
What I thought was funnier was that Arteta realised what was happening, told him to go back on. He ran about 5 steps and Kane had smashed it in the net by then. He just turned around again and walked off again.
I mean, we have to remember that certainly in the second half, by that point, Arsenal were basically playing with 8 attackers. I mean, Tierney was almost a left back. They only kept Holding and Gabriel back, and they had Bellerin down the right. So, they had decent chances and lots of chances in the game, but we were comfortable. So I think that yes, maybe defensively we didn't look as good, but Arsenal were going for anything that they could. I don't think they would have minded conceding a third because they knew they had to try and do something extraordinary to get one back. As it was, they couldn't even do that, and we had no intention, I think, of scoring a third. If it came our way, it would have been great, but it wasn't something that was part of the plan, let's say.
But you know what, HG, just on that, I think if we'd have wanted to, we could, at will.
Possibly, but was it worth risking it? I think that's the question. There have been various people who have said that Arsenal could have played for 3 hours tonight and not scored because we were good enough defensively, and they seemed only capable of trying crosses, which is the one thing that we are actually very good at.
But there's method to that, because if you keep crossing the ball in the box, eventually you're going to score, apparently. That's
pure maths, isn't it? According to Arteta, you are bound to score. It's the most ridiculous thing I think I've heard a manager say for a very long time. Something that Rodgers would come out with, as far as I'm concerned. This idea that the more you do something that's not very effective, the better chance you have of being not effective. That's the logic, right? It's crazy.
Well, what was it last week? They had 30-something, and didn't they have 40-something against us today?
Over 40, yeah. Over 40 crosses. It's just...
Do you think Arteta's there in the change room scratching his head going, I just can't understand it. We've had so many crosses. I don't understand where it's going wrong.
There is a bit of Stan Laurel about him, so maybe, yeah. I just... we always talk about our defenders, being quite slow and not having pace, certainly when it comes to Dyer and Toby. But when you play the way that we do, it's really not that important. It's important that someone is able to spin off you. And until they brought Nketiah on, they had no one that was capable of doing that. Aubameyang wasn't interested. Lacazette was dropping deep. And so, yeah, they had lots of the ball, but we wanted them to have it because, frankly, they weren't capable of doing anything with it.
Seb, were you a little bit surprised at the way that Arsenal set up today? Because they've been playing 3 at the back quite regularly, and we've struggled this season, certainly, against teams that have played that formation. Were you surprised that you went with 4 at the back?
Not especially. I think with Luis injured, and then, who'd you bring in? I think it was Mustafi on the bench. Yeah, I wouldn't have him anywhere near the team. So, yeah, I think that probably had a lot to do with it. But I was very surprised with their tactics because, look, they've got some decent players. I don't like obviously to praise Arsenal, but they've got some decent players. But anyone can see they are not playing to their strengths. To whip those balls, well, they didn't even whip the balls into. To put those balls into the box, that is meat and drink to Eric Dyer, particularly. I thought was outstanding today, and Toby. I think I read that Aubameyang has scored 75 goals for Arsenal, 3 headers. And what are you doing? And the thing is, as much as Højbjerg and Sissoko were fantastic today, there was nothing actually in and around them. It was just making sure that they were positionally secure and mopping up things that Dyer and Alderweireld were putting towards them. So they weren't really struggling because it was just so easy. And this is where the tactic came from in the second half. And Jose said it in his post-match interview, which was, we don't need to do anything at 2-0. Yeah, but and as boring and as tragic as that sounds, and Graham Souness will go on for hours and hours about how he doesn't like watching it, and apparently said today Spurs are his first love, which if that's his first love, I'd hate to think how he treats his wife, but
beating her. Yeah, I take that back. And those views are not the views of the Cheese Room. Thanks very much.
But I mean, this is Jose is right, and it's going to take a bit of getting used to, and it's completely different. I spoke to my dad today, who hasn't watched Spurs now for a good few years because he can't stand the change in football and stuff, and it is different to watch. It's defensive football. But it gets results time and time and time again. It gets results, and every single player on that pitch today was an 8 out of 10 minimum. Every single one, from Lloris to Kane. 8 to 10 out of 10. Højbjerg is fantastic. Sissoko is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. Who would have said that 18 months ago? It's incredible. He's got every single player believing, and he's got us believing. And that
believe.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. The Sky pundits seriously don't seem to like it, because you've got Jamie Redknapp chipping in every now and then going, "Oh, this isn't our Tottenham player. I'm surprised that the players are bought into it." You say, Souness moaning about it. But G. Nev was really interesting that he said you used to play against like Benitez's teams and Mourinho's teams, and you'd think you were doing better than them. You had, passing was better, possession was better, and then you'd lose. And I think that perfectly sums it up, basically. It was like a game where I didn't feel like we were better at any point, apart from the 2 amazing goals. But, we still come away with a victory, and it's job done. Can't really complain with that, can you? Is there anything to talk about in the second half in particular?
No, we should have had a third. But no, I mean, I think the second half was just proof that Mourinho was quite happy to do whatever it takes. We saw Davies come on. How many defenders did we end the game with? Was it just Kane
eight,
and...
I think.
Yeah, Kane and someone else. I can't even think who it would have been. Kane and Lucas, I think, were the 2 attackers that were left at the end of the game. So it's Mourinho knows what's up. I mean, like we can sit here and say that Arsenal are a bad team, and obviously the table indicates that they are. But you still have to do it. We've got Palace away next. We know from experience that those games tend to be quite tight. Usually 1 goal in it, and that's kind of what we want from Mourinho. We want it to be us that gets the goal and able to see it out. So I'm just really happy. I mean, that's the crazy thing, that the game today, as nerve-wracking as it was for me, I can sit here at the end of it and I know that my team is top of the league still, another week guaranteed, unless Liverpool score another 6 goals in the next 30 minutes. It's just it's a wonderful place to be in, and the best part is watching, or certainly reading on certain Arsenal forums, the idea that it's almost like we picked their pocket, but they still think they're better than us. This idea that our little pony, as Jose calls us, our little pony is somehow worse than their thoroughbred, although their thoroughbred is sick and only has 2 legs and just runs around in circles. It's amazing to think that where we've come from. Certainly in the last 10 years, let's say. We've come from being a team that we're dreaming of maybe one time getting in the Champions League, to where we are now, a club that, frankly, should be thinking much, much higher and trying to be the best, not just the best of the rest.
No, agreed. I think you're right. We ended up with, because Rodon came on for Bergwijn, so I don't know what we must have ended up with 6 at the back, I guess, because we were playing 5-3-2 with
plus Højbjerg and Sissoko. I mean, it was
very defensive.
Since the West Ham game. Right, we played 5 games, conceded 1 goal against Brighton that shouldn't.
I haven't forgotten you, Graham Scott.
Right. We've kept clean sheets. I know we've gone over this, but we kept clean sheets against Man City, Chelsea, and Arsenal today. We've scored 25 goals. Right. Kane and Son are at the moment the best strike force in the world. Right. Not just in the Premier League. They are the best two strikers in the world. Okay. There aren't many players who could have scored that goal that Son scored today. It's a really good time to be a Spurs fan. And best of all, we have a guy in charge. He knows what to do.
Exactly.
We've had some brilliant football under Pochettino, some wonderful, wonderful results. And yet we had a manager, and it pains me to say it because I love the man, but he didn't know what he was doing a lot of the time. He put the team out. He told them to play. That was it. There was no other plan. You know, I really hope for all the doubters that next week we see a slight deviation against Crystal Palace, and I think we will. If we go to Crystal Palace and play the same way, I will have slight concerns because I'm looking now at how can we win the Premier League, and I don't think we can win the Premier League playing like this against everyone, but I think we can win the Premier League if we choose our tactics correctly, and I think Jose will do that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been difficult because it's 3 games in a row, so it does feel like we've been playing this forever. But no, I agree. It's the only concern is that Palace scored 5 yesterday, so Jose might think, oh, we need to shut up shop. Just quickly, I know you've just said about Son and Kane being great. It's worth pointing out that Kane today is now the all-time leading scorer in the North London derby, taking the record off the great Bobby Smith and also some bloke called Adebayor. Caller, how important are those two to us? It's just we're saying on a weekly basis how great they are, aren't we?
Completely and utterly indispensable. If we lost them, we would have to try and play in a different way. And I suppose, to injury or whatever, I'm not suggesting they're going to go anywhere. No. And I think that is something that will happen at some stage in the season. That's when we get tested, because I don't think Kane stayed fit for a full season ever. And I don't, and equally, Son's also had certainly a niggly injury or an injury every season. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have what we do when those people go out. What we're trying to do is develop in the Europa League a plan B, I think, and that's not going too well.
The interesting thing is, we sat here, towards the end of certainly before COVID happened. And Kane was out and Son was out, and we're looking at options as who's going to be the focal point, right? And yes, okay, we've got Vinicius now who could be that focal point, but we've changed our system completely to the point where we don't really have a focal point. Like Kane drops back and plays as the 10 and allows the wide forwards to really be the main threat. So we all know that Kane is great, but I just think that there's not just a change in players in the squad, but also a change in how we play. And it's made us probably a little less predictable when it comes to those changes that would need to happen if Kane or Son do get injured. Like we know that Bergwijn can play on the left. I mean, we've got wide attackers, really more than we can shake a stick at. But when it comes to, what do we do if Kane goes out, we could go with the focal point with Vinicius, but we could also, if we wanted to try to play with a 10, maybe use Dele in that role, because that's probably the type of thing that he would like to do, is to play that kind of role and certainly not be the focal point waiting for people to come up and play with him.
Kane, particularly in the role that he's playing this season, is in a weird way is far less physically involved. I've noticed it over the last 2 or 3 games that there's not the flying tackles coming in against him because he's playing slightly deeper. He's not facing the last ditch tackles and things like that where he's turned his ankle or got hit and things like that. He's actually physically involved less. So I think the risk of injury, touch wood and everything else at this point, is actually a lot less than the role that he's previously played.
I'm not sure that's true. He's playing more in midfield and he's tackling a lot more. And I think that, if anything, that almost increases his risk, because it's not like he's flying onto anything and then hop out the way. I think he's crunching into tackles in midfield. So I think, if anything, he's more at risk. I hope you're right, Seb. Don't get me wrong. That's just my 2 pence on it.
Mm. Yeah, it's difficult because I think Xhaka nailed him once today as well, didn't he? And he does. You're right. He kind of gets involved in these physical battles, but maybe it's not at quite as much speed. Maybe there's less risk in that. I don't know. But
I think he sees a lot coming, much more than when he's playing further up the pitch. And on that note, Caller, I'm sure you'll agree with me, how on earth it took 7 fouls for Xhaka to get booked today.
Unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. He was hammering into everyone like a crazy fool. I think they even said on the commentary, it's like he wants to show to the Arsenal fans he's trying really hard by getting booked. Bizarre. How it took him 7 or whatever it was, massive crunching challenges before he finally went in the book, I don't know. Because I think within 2 minutes he should have been in the book.
Yeah, agreed. And the thing is, Lo Celso, first tackle, all right, it was a little bit dirty, but he got a yellow straight away. It did feel like the ref was a bit generous. He gave him a bit of the Eric Lamela treatment and let him get away with a few too many.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to the Antwerp game, we've got some exciting news. Well, depends on what you find exciting. But the pod have decided to launch a Patreon account where we'll be bringing our top supporters and top cheeseheads some extra content, obviously in return for a small amount of remuneration. We're not going to take the piss. We only need enough to basically cover our expenses and to try and help us do a bit more and give a bit more back. If you sign up and we get enough people, you'll be getting some top Cheese Room merch, but we'll also be giving you regular exclusive articles, extra pods, and we'll have some game chat so you can join us exclusively talking to the podders as we rant during the football matches. Lots of additional things. All the details are on our Facebook site, and also if you go to Patreon/The Cheese Room Podcast, you'll find it there, or just go on Patreon and search for it. We're just trying to basically engage with our top fans a little bit more as we grow and sort of give something back. So if you're interested in that, then please go on there. We're not going to hammer away at it, and it's worth pointing out that we're charging half as much as other well-known podcasts. So get involved. Also, our sponsor, footballprizes.co.uk, are this week giving away a 2018-19, I think it's the away shirt. It's the blue one with the sort of light blue panels at the top, which is signed by the old man himself, Mr. Pochettino. Ericsson's on there, Mora, and I think Sissoko as well. Tickets, as always, are $4.95, $99 available, but I think half of them at least have gone so far. And the deadline for that is at 7:30 on the 7th of December, so you haven't got long. Get involved in that, cheeseheads, and good luck. Right, let's move on to Antwerp. HG. This is a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? Because now we've got Palace next weekend. It's worth pointing out that HG managed to blag a pass to the last game midweek, and we got to ask him a question in the post-match press conference, and we asked whether topping the group was important or not. And obviously we need to win this game midweek in order to do that. And he said yes. And I think that's a fair point, because you look at the teams that are going to be dropping down from the Champions League. There's a few potentially spicy ones in there. And also some of the teams that finish top of their groups in the Europa League, we could do with avoiding in the next round if we want it to be a nice, easy game. So HG, what do you think we're going to do midweek?
I think we are going to switch almost everyone.
Really?
Yeah, I do, because I just... Like, I understand that it would be nice to avoid someone like, PSG or Man United or whoever might drop down from that group. I don't know. But I think the more important game is keeping momentum in the Premier League. If you ask me to finish first or second in the Europa League, I don't really care. I mean, like, especially when the draw, you've no idea who you're going to get. Like, we might get Rangers if they win their group, and then you think, okay, well, it's a tough game because it's British, but it could be a lot worse. So I don't think we need to worry too much. I'm just glad we're through to the next stage. I looked at Antwerp and where they are. I mean, they lost today in the Belgian league, and they played one of their rivals for the title. And then next week they have another one of their rivals for the title, this time at home. So maybe they'll switch things up as well, because their job is done too. Maybe they would rather finish second if they thought it was going to get a bigger opponent and maybe more money when February comes around. You just don't know. But I think as far as Spurs are concerned, I would expect to see Vinicius, if he's fit, and Dele and all the others that don't play or didn't play today. Doherty will start for sure. I think Sanchez may get another game. That'll be an interesting one. But I think we'll make quite a few changes, if I'm honest.
And Caller, would you like to see more youngsters? Ideally, if I could have asked Jose any question, it would have been that. Because even midweek, with less than 10 minutes remaining, you put Aurier on the right wing when Jack Clark sat on the bench. We've seen some players get chances in the game against Ludogorets in the game before, and they didn't really get much more than 6-7 minutes. So would you like to see more players used now in this next game?
We've got to win the game, so I think we've got to be pragmatic about it. Play a strong team, hopefully get the job done by half time, and then put youth into it. I wouldn't mess around with it, to be honest. I would start with a strong lineup, and I wouldn't play the kids as such until we're in a strong enough position to win. Because I think finishing top in the group is important. Genuinely do. You want to get the best draw possible to give yourself the best chance of winning the competition. Playing the kids is not necessarily, much as though I would like to see the kids, I don't necessarily think it's the right thing for Spurs.
I mean, this is it. Like it doesn't guarantee us a good draw. It maybe gives us better odds of a good draw.
And that's it.
I mean, and we saw that, with the Champions League. Like, some years we finished top of the group and we got a really difficult opponent in the next round, and other times we finished second and got one of the easier options in the last 16. So you just don't know. But I think as far as Spurs are concerned, the more important game is Palace, and so Antwerp at home, in front of, again, I guess 2,000 people, is a chance for those squad players to get the minutes that they need.
Is it the last 32 then of the Europa?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it 32 and then, okay. So there's quite a lot of knockout phases, isn't there?
It's an extra round compared to the Champions League. But yeah, there are 24 teams that go through the Europa League and then 8 that come down from the Champions League to make the 32. And so we'll have a 33% chance of drawing a Champions League team with the way that the draw works. But I guess I'm not fussed. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Thursday night is about getting the other players the minutes that they need to stay match fit, to be at the top of the game in case we need them. And like, if you look at the 7 English teams in European competition so far this season, I think this is a great stat. I love it. You've got obviously Tottenham and Leicester and Liverpool and both Manchester teams and Chelsea. Like, they're the top 6 in the league. Right, the only one of the European teams that is struggling is our rivals from down the road, who are 15th right now. We've managed the system quite well, and I think that all we needed to do in this half of the season was to make sure we got to the knockout stage. When the knockout stage happens, then we worry a bit more about making sure that everyone is rotated and fit. But I think for Thursday night, we have to focus on giving people like Winks and Sanchez and Davies and Doherty and even Joe Hart, give them the chance to play, because it's best for the club if they do.
HG, what I would say is it's going to be interesting, because once we're into the knockout phase, those same players may not get as much football.
No, which is why we need to make sure that they get some minutes now, or that they feel comfortable with the system that we want to play. Like, I understand that, if we draw a really difficult tie, maybe one of the Champions League dropouts, if we draw one of them in February, then yeah, it's going to suck, because we may have to rotate a bit more judiciously. But I still think that with a half decent draw, you can make the quarterfinals of the Europa League without really trying too hard. And by that point of the season, every game's going to matter no matter what. So we've negotiated the Europa League really well so far. We had a couple of scares in the playoff rounds, but won the group stage. Losing at Antwerp was annoying, but it obviously hasn't really affected too much, because we beat the other 2 teams pretty handily, or we did enough. And so we're in a situation where we can, let's say, okay, we'll give chances to those players that aren't getting chances in the league.
Do you agree with all that, Seb? Because Palace are an interesting proposition. I know they've absolutely smashed West Brom, although it was a 10-man West Brom. But before that, they lose to Newcastle, they've lost to Burnley, and they've only really beaten Leeds, Fulham, and they've lost to teams like Chelsea. They're kind of a bit up and down, but they've not really beaten anybody decent this year. So do you think that Jose will have an eye on that, or do you think this is like a little bit of a breather before we get back into Leicester and Liverpool?
I've been waiting really patiently to say you're all talking bollocks.
Yes.
You go on Thursday with a strong team, and the reason that you do that is that you can make 5 changes, and you can make 5 changes whenever you want. If it was 3, it's a different matter. Go with a strong-ish team. I'm not saying the team that we put out today should play. I think Sanchez might play his last game, because I think he's out the door in January. But maybe Dele Alli comes in and Kane gets rested. But apart from that, I think it's a very strong team. I think Højbjerg will play. I think Sissoko will play, and I think they'll aim to win the game early on, and then make the 5 changes to see the game out, and then with a view to Palace. I think, and this is my view, it's imperative that you win the group. And I know what HG said, that if you finish second, there's only a 33% chance, but you can get a really dodgy draw.
But you can still get a really dodgy draw if you win the group. I mean, that's the thing. So, like, I'm pretty certain, and I'm not certain 100%, but I'm pretty certain that the 8 Champions League teams that come down, 4 of them, the higher seeded 4, get put in with the group winners, and the lower seeded 4 get put with the group second places. So that, like, until you know what those 8 teams are going to be, you just don't know how good they're going to be. You really have no idea. So as far as I'm concerned, whether you get, I mean, if it's Leipzig or Man United or Gladbach, then okay, that would be a tough draw. But Gladbach's seeding in the UEFA coefficient is probably pretty low, which would put them in the lower 4 seeds. So, like, to me, once you get to the last 32, it doesn't really matter. You want a good draw no matter where you are, and I don't think there's a massive difference in quality. I really don't.
But there's one thing that you're forgetting is that we've got a winner in charge, and he goes out to win games.
Yeah, but I'm not sitting here saying that I don't want to win. I'm just saying I don't think it matters if we don't win.
But the performance last Thursday will have made Jose's mind up. I'll tell you now, there's no way that team that played on last Thursday he will put the same 11 out.
So basically, Seb, you're just agreeing with everything I said.
No, there will be a mix and match. Højbjerg, I tell you now, I guarantee Højbjerg plays. I bet Lloris plays, right? Because he will want to win that game. He can make the changes if he needs to. It's at home. We're expected to win. We should win. If we go 2-3-0 up at half time, there will be 3 changes at half time. And that's the job done. You rest your players. But he will want to win that group. It's imperative we win that group. And look, like,
it's not imperative we win the group because it's the same result. We get to the next stage whether we finish first or second. So it's not imperative. It just it makes us think we're going to have an easier draw, but there's no guarantee of that. So if you're saying you want to keep winning because that's a good mentality, then great, I would agree with you. But when it comes to whether it actually matters, no, I don't think it does.
The lower seeded teams that will come down are teams like Dynamo Kiev, Krasnodar, and the teams that we could potentially play against could be one of United, Paris Saint-Germain, Leipzig. It could be Real Madrid. Could be Ajax. Inter Milan, Shakhtar. There's a definite argument that finishing top will give us easier games. I think that's just a fact.
There's no way that you want to finish your Europa League campaign after losing in Antwerp and drawing last week with a loss at home and still qualify. It will just set a terrible precedent. You go out, you win that game. You play a decent team.
But if you lose one game, it doesn't mean you're going to lose the next. There's no precedent there. I mean, it would suck to lose, don't get me wrong, but it's not as if it's going to derail our season, which is what you make it seem like. It's one game against Antwerp, who have also qualified. Like, will they really care? I don't see why they should, because their goal was to qualify. Whatever they get now is a dream situation for them. But at the end of the day, to me, it's like, 51-49. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we've qualified, and that's what happened on Thursday. So, like, in many cases, this week's game is pretty much a dead rubber because both sides know the situation.
I'd say it's more 70-30, but I get your point. It's not the end of the world, but I think it'd be better if we qualify. Even from the Europa League, you've got teams like Villarreal top in the group, Lille or AC Milan, Napoli. Who else? Right, Rangers.
100% he plays a strong side on Thursday, in my view. 100%.
Yeah.
Do we have a weak side?
Let me rephrase. The people he knows he can rely on will be playing Thursday.
My guess would be there'd be 5 to 6 players from today's team kept in the team, and I think that Rodon would obviously play ahead of Sanchez if he was allowed to, which we know he's not. I think Sanchez comes in for one of Toby and Dyer, and one of Toby and Dyer stays.
Well, we shall see what happens. I think that brings that one to a close. Let's just quickly have predictions then. HG, what are you saying?
So the game against Antwerp will win comfortably, 3-1.
Good stuff. Caller?
4-1. Just because I'm one above HG.
Yeah, in your predictions, but your predictions don't come true.
They do.
Seb, what do you think?
Strong team to start. 3-0 up by half time. 5 substitutions. Win 4-0.
Wow. I think it's going to be a KG 2-1. I'm not anywhere near as confident as you lot. Right. That draws that one to a close. I didn't mention earlier for the footballprize.co.uk competition, don't forget to enter with the code 10cheese. That's 10cheese. You get a 10% discount as always. And at least 2 cheeseheads have won prizes so far. So we want to keep that record going. And hopefully one of you will win this one as well. Look out for Brendan's pod on Thursday. I'm not sure who's going to be on this week. That will be reviewing the Antwerp game and obviously previewing the Palace game, so look out for that. Don't forget to subscribe to all of our social media channels and our newfound Patreon accounts. And Caller, are you doing any YouTube videos this week?
Yeah, we could potentially Thursday night could do one.
Yeah, for our final Europa game.
Final Europa lane. I mean, it's boring as fuck, to be honest, but yeah.
And I'm on a 1 minute delay as well. So
I mean, it would help if the people I was like broadcasting with was mildly professional, really. But you know,
when I stream it, like I'm a minute behind, and I had it on BT the other week on casting off my proper fucking officially paid for BT account, and it was like a minute and a half delayed. It's just like always in the past.
It is, you just need to fork out, put your hand in your pocket, don't you? Hopefully, you know, the Patreon thing will help with that.
Come on, people, join our Patreon just so I can have proper Sky TV.
But join me, yes. We'll be looking ahead to the to next weekend's fixture. Friday evenings with the Caller. I'm not sure who I've got in the cave this week, but I'm sure there'll be a fantastic guest. And I was joined Friday by Brendan McCurdy of Brazilian Spurs fame. And you can find that on our YouTube channel.
And worldwide Premier Sports now. He's a TV celebrity. Lucky to have got him on.
Amazing, really.
Right, cheeseheads. Until next time, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Hello, how are you? It's nice to yes. No room is big enough to contain Vlad, even the room of cheese. This is why Vlad has a brand new podcast starting this week, Swinging from the Skywalk, bringing together my two favorite things, Tottenham and swinging. Look forward to seeing you there.